What's up?
Hey, what's going on?
Hey,
What's
everybody.
going?
How you doing?
What's good?
How y'all doing? What's going on?
You tell me, brother.
So look, I'm so honored to have y'all on tonight. So let me just give me just a second here. We're gonna wait for some people to get on. All right. All right. All right. So if y'all can share this real quick, your lives. Share this as well. All right. So we got some viewers on. So if y'all can introduce yourselves, let everybody know who you are. Start with Coach Jenkins.
You may have difficulty.
All right. Can y'all see me clear?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
All right. All right. Introduce yourselves. We got some people on live tonight, and we also streaming on YouTube as well. So y'all introduce yourselves.
God bless you, everybody. My name is Russell Rillie. Hailing from the wonderful state of New York tonight, and I'm indeed glad to be here with my brothers to discuss race and politics on tonight. Something that's always been in my bread house that I've been interested in. So I want to hear your thoughts and share with the people that are watching and listening on tonight as well.
Hey everybody, I'm Kevin Jones, right here in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. Native of the city. I like to think I'm doing, my part, at least, holding up the space that I hold up to give back to the city. And I'm real passionate about it. And I think conversations like this really help move everybody forward, and not just, me or Mr. Russell or JR, but I think it helps move everybody forward. I'm looking forward to taking part in it.
Perfect. All right, so I don't know what happened to Coach Jenkins. Let me see. Get him added back.
Coach Jenkins out
there. We
the
go. Coach Jenkins, are you there? All right, there we go.
Yeah, I don't know what happened, man. I was my connection.
Oh. Well, let's introduce yourself to everybody, Coach. We can hear you fine.
Yeah. We heard you fine when you spoke.
JR, say that one more time.
We can hear you fine.
Okay, maybe it's just on my end, but anyway, so I'm LaShawn Jenkins. I'm an educator. In fact, today we started our new year. It's my 20th year in the educational trench. So just been doing a lot of work around education and equity and community probably for the last couple of decades. So a little bit about me.
So look, I want to jump right in and get to it. And I really want to get this question with Russell. Can I call you Russell tonight?
Of course.
No titles tonight, right?
No titles.
All right. So look, we're gonna jump right into politics, and the reason why I chose you guys because y'all are unfiltered. You say what's on your mind in a respectful manner. So I really want to talk tonight and just hear your guys' opinion. Let's talk about Joe Biden and his VP pick. Who people are saying will be his VP pick. What's your guys' thoughts? I'm hearing Kamala Harris. I'm hearing Susan Rice. I'm hearing Val Demings. I'm hearing Keisha Lance Bottoms. What you guys think?
I mean, I've heard all those reports as well. I mean, it's you hear it over the news waves. The convention's supposed to start in a day or so, and he has yet to say, we're on bated breath trying to figure out who he's going to pick. We do know that he says it's going to be a woman, and a lot of people said it's going to be a black woman. And in my opinion, the list that I've seen, they are all qualified, but I think that it's going to come down to his age. A lot of people believe he's going to be a one-term president if he wins because of his age. So the person that he picks as his VP is going to have to be ready to step into those shoes at any moment, which is what should be anyway. But I think that this is going to be even more pivotal to find someone that has the administrative experience, the overseas international experience to clean up the mess that the president is walking to on day one in January 10th, January 20th, 2021.
What do you think, Kev?
I think it's a tough choice to make. I mean, because you have so many qualified black women who I think could step in and be president, and I guess in a more short term and immediate fashion be vice president and be real competent and effective. But I guess since you have us on the what is it, the Monday morning quarterback or something like that, you got the border politics. My personal opinion is that I like Susan Rice. I like that. I like her story, or what I know about her story. Her mother was a huge advocate for the I think the Pell Grant. It was something that really it was education based, and so her mother has been in the fight. So I mean, she sort of has that kitchen table experience that children of those advocates and those kids for such success have. But I also I think that her experience with foreign relations, I think she was the part of the National Security Administration. Am I right on that? Okay, yeah, I'm pulling from my memory. But yeah, so I really like her. And then what I like in politics, sort of what President Obama had. He just came from obscurity, and he really knew who he was back in 2004 when he gave that speech at the DNC, and he just catapulted. And I think Rice could have that same sort of trajectory.
Let me ask you this then, and this was Coach Jenkins. We're talking about possible VP picks right now. If you can hear me.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Is America ready for a black woman as a vice president?
You know what I think?
No, and also let me throw this in there. Also knowing that this black woman will probably most likely be president. Because let's face it, Joe Biden is how old? 76?
78.
He's 78.
He'll be 78 come inauguration if he wins.
Which I don't understand why, but
I'm gonna be honest. I think that I think a lot has changed since the first time that we saw a presidential candidate promote a woman on that level. Back in 1984 when Walter Mondale selected Geraldine Ferraro for to be his running mate. I think in 1984, that sent shockwaves up the spines of Americans at the thought that a woman could be a vice president. And now you're asking, is America ready for an African American female? I'm going to be honest. I think this past presidential election has shown that not only is America ready for change, but I think it's shown us that America is capable of anything. And so when you talk about, is America ready for an African American female vice presidential candidate? The question was 4 years ago, was America ready for a president who had no political experience? And so, unfortunately, I think the vulnerability of our country is at a point where anybody who showcases a skill set and a talent set to get the job done, I honestly think have a fair chance to do it, even if it is a black female.
So it sounds like to me you're saying don't underestimate America, though, right?
Right.
Okay. So do you think that with all what the polls are saying, Biden is going to win, right? That's what all the polls are saying. But I saw where someone was saying, "Don't underestimate America," and they predicted that Trump would win the election. What's you guys' thoughts on that?
Wow. I'll bite.
I'm serious. This was actually a prophet that said this. He said that Trump do not underestimate America, and that Trump will probably be reelected.
I honestly thought that America was ready 4 years ago when Hillary was running. But in looking at the data after the fact and speaking to a lot of culturally diverse people, I'll say it that way, I think that people in their heart were ready to do it, but when they got behind that ballot box, the reality of a lot of culturally diverse people, whether they come from Asia or come from Latin America, culturally, women are still not looked at as being equal. You know what I mean? So I think that when it comes down to actually flipping that switch or circling that circle, that's when the change is made. Now, Hillary had a lot of baggage. We all know that. And for some of us, we felt it was a lesser of two evils. But this time around, I think that, as Brother LaShawn has said, I think we're poised to show the world that we can clean up our mess. But it's not going to come easy. Mr. Trump and his administration is going to throw everything, and they have been openly, not even like behind the scenes, openly, blatantly doing things up front to suppress voter suppression, to suppress the black vote, all those things right now, so that he can try to, as you say, navigate another election.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go ahead and say it. So I feel like if Pakistan elected Benazir Bhutto as their prime minister a lifetime ago, well, maybe not lifetime ago, in the weeds, people, but I mean, it was back in the 80s, I think. But I mean, like if they did, I think America, I think we put too many labels on things. Hillary ran a very, very, very entitled and arrogant campaign. Like when you look at Pennsylvania, it has nothing to do with her being a woman. It has nothing to do with America's appetite or palate to follow a woman. Most of us have a lot of experience as Americans following a woman's lead. Most of us as men, whether we like to admit it or not, we follow a woman's lead, like ultimately. And so I don't think that it was about her being a woman. I think that it was, and I worked very closely with that campaign. And here's the thing, that campaign, okay, all organizations start at the top. That campaign being the organization it started at the top, which was the name at the top of the ballot, top of the ticket, the face of it. And, the mood across the country was that there was no way that she could lose to Donald Trump. And they even flirted with the idea of her slogan being, "It's her time." Sort of that. It was just an air of entitlement that I never really liked. And again, had nothing to do with her being a woman. But the reality is that if you lost to a black man in America named Barack, like let's take away what that name means to us now. In 2006, 2007, he was a black man with a black wife named Barack in America. If you lost to him, you can very much well lose to a billionaire named Trump. And I think that got lost in all of the political rhetoric and all of the talk about how unprepared and unfit and how much of everything bad that Donald Trump is. I think that got lost in it.
Anybody else? Coach Jenkins, you thinking?
You on mute, Coach?
Hold on.
Yeah, I was just processing. I mean, I think those are some. I think there's a good point you raised. Just in terms of just the political expectation of of the idea of her losing. I don't think anybody with any type of political experience or savvy thought that she, for a chance, could lose to Donald Trump. Much like Obama winning, and again, I think that just goes back to, I think right now we live in such a time in terms where the vote is so flexible and people are a little bit more aware of what's going on. I think social media has a lot to do with that. 20 years ago, people didn't have, when you look at the voting block and you looked at who voted, it was typically educated, middle-aged people who voted, because one, older voters felt out of the loop, and two, younger voters didn't think that their vote mattered. But now you have such a broad spectrum in terms of like the voting block that you really can't count anyone out. And so when you look at, just the perception that we have of these candidates, I really believe that if candidates really work the ballot the way that they should, it's hard for me to count anybody out in these elections. As bad as I hate to say it, but even in the midst of like the political climate of what we're living right now, I still think that Donald Trump is still a contender. Now, someone with his track record should not even still be in the race.
Right.
But unfortunately, because of the ideology of voters, he's still very much a contender for 2020. And if Biden and his camp don't bring the heat, it's a strong possibility that he could win a re-election if people, A, don't show up to vote, and B, if the right voting blocks don't turn out.
Do you think the media is making it to be so relaxed to voters because they're showing the polls as if Biden being so ahead? Do you think that's making us relax, saying, I don't need to go vote? You know what I mean?
I think what's making us relax is exactly what made us relax 4 years ago. I mean, honestly, after the Democratic convention and after the Republican convention, when people realized it was going to be a showdown between Hillary and Donald Trump, we automatically relaxed because, again, it was the notion is no way this guy's going to go straight from TV to the White House. Yeah. So people relaxed because it's no way possible he could have won. And I think we're kind of at the forefront of the very same notion. After everything that he's done, after everything that he said, after every racist comment he's made, after every action that he has shown implicit bias, that he has supported systemic racism, that he has used his executive power to protect Confederate statues more so than to implement policies against COVID. Like, we're at the same point where we feel like it's no way a guy with that kind of track record can win. But again, it could be a duplicate of what we saw 4 years ago if we get complacent and relaxed and take breaks from the polls. So it's kind of scary, to be honest. To me, it's scary that you can do all of that and still have a shot to win.
Yeah. Donald Trump is everything that, those comics on like Comic View. I mean, Def Comedy Jam, that they would joke about the president being, right? Like a lot of baby mamas. He gives all his homeboys jobs. They criminals. They get locked up. He gives them pardons. I mean, it's just he gives all his family. And that's the irony of it from just a cultural standpoint, especially Black culture. If you look at it, it's like, I mean, to Coach Jenkins' point, I mean, he has. Yeah, I mean, it's standard, whether we like to admit it or not. It's a double standard, and it's everything that I think is the perfect storm, man. Joe Biden, he doesn't excite people, and it's one of those things where it's like, okay, like you look at the Chicago Bulls for a convenient example. Michael Jordan, who will ever be a part of that franchise that does the things for that franchise and galvanizes the energy of that fan base that Michael Jordan did in the 80s and 90s.
Right.
I'm going to be the first to say nobody. It's hard, right? And so I think it's that effect with President Obama, especially when you look at, those make or break Black votes, those make or break woman votes, and just the Democratic Party in many degrees at large. I mean, it's hard to follow that. And we're still so fresh when everything's compared to them. And it's like, hey, it's tough. It's tough.
Do you think that a lot of millennials are straying away from the Democratic Party? The reason I answer is because I am seeing a lot of millennials become independents or more so Republicans. And that's something that I don't think that the Democratic Party is realizing, that a lot of Black millennials are independents or Republicans. I mean, what's your thoughts? Russell, holla at me, Russell.
I think you're right. I think that I hate putting labels on things, but I believe that millennials are going against the establishment, whether it is the traditional Democratic establishment and even the traditional Republican establishment. So there, I agree. Independents, moderates, conservatives, along those lines. But I think that they are now in a world where they hate the establishment. They hate what has been portrayed. Like, this is not government to them. So understanding the forefathers, understanding the Constitution, understanding the political process, there has to be a better way. And I think that a lot of millennials, and just in general, do not like the process. But we don't have enough millennials' voice in politics as of yet to change the narrative and change the direction that their policies can go towards how their lifestyle is.
So let me ask this: when it comes to voting, of course, Donald Trump had mentioned something about needing ID. I think he mentioned that in his one of his most recent interviews. What are y'all thoughts on needing ID? And I just want to bring this part up. We need ID for anything else. And I'm not saying I'm an advocate. I'm just saying we need ID for anything else. What are your thoughts about why is it we make an excuse for ID needing for voters, but not when we go to the drugstore to get medication? I'm just asking.
JR, I think
I'm not a proponent. I'm just asking.
I think when you make prerequisites for anything, and I get it, you need an ID to open a bank account. You need an ID when you're using a bank card. But bottom line is, I understand that, but I think that anytime you impose a prerequisite for somebody's
Did we lose him?
I think we lost him.
We just lost him.
Yeah. Well, so I'll say,
and so I think that there's a possibility that through our systems and policies that we mark people sometimes and we don't know it. So if I'm a person that doesn't have an ID, if I don't have a driver's license, if I don't have a state issued ID, it doesn't mean that I don't have an alternative means of identifying who I am. But if I don't have the mandated identification that the state is requiring for me to vote, it becomes a system of marginalization. And I think that you can marginalize people by having the right intentions, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and so those are great points, but I also see where you're coming from, JR, is it
was my Wi-Fi earlier, it might be theirs.
But it is it's a slippery slope, because like you don't want to set those precedents to where you open up a can of worms. Like, where does it stop? So and that's where I think that compromise, I think that the bipartisan formation of any rules that eventually go into place, I think that's where that's important, because to Coach's point, I mean, you don't want to say only state issue ID. And I think there are factions of every state government, even, our federal government, where, and I'm talking legislators here, where they would like to see ID be required, or state ID, like a driver's license. And that's the argument they make. But I think every adult, or every, 17, 18-year-old kid in school, just out of school, I think they have some form of identification. And so I think, that's where, legislation comes in. I think that you don't make that rule where you have to have a state issued driver's license or a state issued ID, because there are people who live in places, I mean, for convenient examples, Bailey, or, out way out in the sticks somewhere, they can't get to a DMV and get there. But I do think provision should be in place to accommodate.
Russell, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Hey, Russell, do y'all have in New York anything for voter ID, like ID needed for voters?
No, we just show up to the poll, give our district if we know it, our address, and then they find our name in the log and we sign, and that's it. Signatures match, they good to go. You know what I'm saying? But to both those are very good points. Like you, JR, I'm not for or against. I am against for it being instituted like now for this election. I think that if we're going to go that route, ramp up, and when I say ramp up, I'm not even talking about 4 years. Give it a designation of 2030. We're going to require everyone to have, some type of ID. So this way, we can now work in our communities to make sure that people have whatever the minimum requirement is over time, so everyone has what they need. I would never want to be in agreement with something that's going to be instituted today to suppress the vote and hinder the vote to vote. I would never do that.
I just throw it out there. I really wish that Joe Biden would have picked Andrew Cuomo. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, and so again, so there's the personal convictions and ideologies that kind of politics, right? Of every person's perspective. But then I think, when you have, I think there's a level of maturation in political opinion where you can talk the sport of it, right? Like, why Tony Romo fumbled that kickoff. I mean, the extra point and all. Like, you can talk about it, right, without really having a personal alignment with it. And so, to that point, I mean, I'll share just a brief conversation that a coach and I had a few weeks ago. I think that talking pure sport of it, I think that Joe Biden, to your point, JR, I think he may have jumped the gun in making that promise that he's going to pick a woman of color. He boxed himself.
That was my next question. Yeah.
He boxed himself in way too soon, and that is not to say that there aren't. I have 2 daughters, so I'm raising 2 Black women in America, and so there's nobody or few people who think that women can do as anything they want to do the way I do. But I do feel like, talking the sport of politics, he boxed himself in too soon and narrowed himself down way too far too early on.
Right. Yeah. Now that part I agree, because I really feel like Brian Crudup, he's listening. He said that Andrew Cuomo is an atheist. But I just like his leadership style during the COVID pandemic. And Russell, I know what's the bishop name? Christopher Williams.
Yep.
Williams lost a few members of his church, I understand, to COVID. I just, just watching CNN and MSNBC, I just really like his leadership style. I mean, it was more leadership style than Trump. I mean, honestly.
Yeah, I'm grateful, to be honest. I know that the rest of the country is still going through, but I'm grateful for not just his leadership, but also his team, regardless of his religious affiliation. I'm one of those people that I will always follow good leadership, regardless of political affiliation. That's just who I am, I don't think Mr. Cuomo would ever want to play number 2 as VP, even though it's something that could lead to being the president. But you also can act differently when you state and you feel that you are not going to run for public office. Then you can really let it loose and let it fly and have no reservations about anything, because you have nothing to lose. And that's the kind of like the seat that he's in. I think that he attained what he wanted. He's now the chairman of the governor's board. I think that's what he wanted. So I think he can, in that bullpen, in that pulpit, he can make statements and dictate policy and be a good bulldog if so choose for any Democrat running for anything.
I agree with Kevin, what you said. I think Biden really did not, and I'm not knocking a woman, being vice president, but I'm just saying, I really think that, he really limited himself.
Yeah. And to be fair, I mean, to wrap that thing around, I mean, there's no way anybody could have, predicted, because I think, so like, if you take COVID out, which I wish to God we could, but if you remove COVID, I mean, he doesn't have that platform. He's not making, mama jokes and dinner table jokes with his brother on CNN. And so I think that sort of removes that and gets us back to where we were pre-COVID.
So I want to shift gears. I really want to get to racism. George Floyd. I want to go all the way back to George Floyd. I really want to touch bases on that sad situation. I work from home right now, and there was one day that I was replaying the whole situation. Like I was replaying the video of that officer's knee to that human being's neck, and I always think about this, and I don't care who says what. I'm gonna say what I want to say. This my live. But had that been a dog, then it would have been all hell in America. You know what I mean? You know, I mean that really just took me back, and I really had to start talking to people because I'm like, that just hurt me. So I just want to see what are you guys' thoughts? Where did that put America? Seeing that knee to the neck. What are you thought? What are your thoughts?
I think it put America where we should have been years ago, and so like I think comparatively, or relatively, I think is a better word. You know, all hell did break loose in an American sense from a culture because, you know, I'm talking in our from our let's say this millennium, right? Like I mean, this millennium, I don't think we've seen the type of response to something that's social justice in that vein that we did with George Floyd. And I think it got us to where we should have been a long time ago. But I think it was reminiscent of the Civil Rights Act in many ways, right? Where, you know, people knew in theory what was happening to Black people. But when the TV came along in the 60s and, you know, you had middle America, which is, you know, a euphemism for white America. When you saw white America really, when they saw people being for doing nothing, right? Like you could see like these men and women and children were walking down the street peacefully and they were hosed down and attacked by dogs. I think that really changed people's perspective. And so Trayvon Martin, all you heard was a 911 call and you heard a testimony of the man who did it. And, you know, the victim wasn't around to tell his side of the story. It happened in the dark. You look at other cases, you know, you catch snippets of it. But George Floyd incident, it was something that, you know, much like a lot of things that have happened in America in the past, last year, last decade, for the past, since, you know, Black and whites have coexisted on this soil. But that was something we saw from the beginning to the end. And we saw the expression on that man's face. We saw him picking pebbles out of his tire as this man. So, I mean, that is what did it. It wasn't the fact that a Black man was killed. That happens all the time and America goes on about its business. But what happened was that we saw it from beginning to end. I think there was very, very, very little room for any type of argument as to why he deserved it.
And just as you, Coach Jenkins and Pastor Rillie, as y'all answer, I also want you to let me know how you felt that day. I mean, what was your thoughts as a Black man?
Man, I still can't find the words. Straight up. I couldn't find the words. Just watching it like over and over and over again, it did something to me. You know, I'm a man of faith, but that day, I had to search hard for God. I had to go to repent about some things I was thinking, some things I was saying. I'm being real. Because I have two sons, I have a grandson, I have a daughter. I don't care what that man did. No one should die like that. You know, I work in the healthcare industry as well, so me seeing his bodily fluids run out of him and him crying for his mother, I can't. That's something that we will never not unsee in our lifetime. And there's new footage now, which is even more crazy. But yeah, it wrecked me. I'm still wrecked over it. I'm still mad and angry.
Yeah. Coach Jenkins?
Unlike what the pastor just said, he said he watched it over and over and over. I'm gonna be honest, man. I watched it one time and I don't know if I could watch it again because I had never seen anything like that before. it just the imagery of it was just it disturbed me, but this disturbed me to my core. And when I'm disturbed to my core, I almost began to being perpetuated. So in that image, I felt rage, I felt mad, I felt angry, I felt like I could hurt somebody because I was so angry. And so what I think we have arrived at in our country is, and this thing has been brewing for a long time. I think that the pinnacle of racism, a lot of people think it was when Donald Trump was elected president. I don't think so. I think the stirring of it was when Barack Obama was appointed president, sensationalizing the things that people were doing, but there were people that were displaying hate literature, hate graffiti, using hate language, 8 years while Obama was in office.
Yeah.
And so it began there when that hate began to be publicized. And I think that the election of Donald Trump, because of his actions and his character, it has almost empowered that people who operate out of that spirit of racism, them to be who maybe they never had the courage to be publicly. And so I think now what has happened is you've got people who are bold as all get out, who do what they want to do and say what they want to say. And when you feel entitled to put your knee in the neck of a man, knowing that people are standing around with cell phones recording it, and you don't feel any type of consciousness
Right.
for humanity, I think that lets us know that we're at a serious breaking point. And I think that if something doesn't change in the area of not only leadership, but if we don't begin to readdress some of these things that we have buried and called it history, if we don't begin to really address these systems that have been designed to marginalize and to oppress a people, then I think that we have some pretty tough days ahead.
Yeah, and it really it really made me feel lucky in many ways, because I think that especially in the South and the Mid-Atlantic South, where everybody on this call except for Brother Russell resides, I think that, and that's not to suggest that it doesn't have its institutions of racism and things like that, but I think that as young Black men, really in America, chances are, I used to have an uncle that said, just keep on living long enough and you'll see what he was talking about. And I think that to a degree, we've seen that look of that officer in a police officer's eyes, or a white man's eyes as they look at us. We've seen that look, and we know what that look looks like. And it's really just to see that look that we've seen at least once in our life as young Black men especially, and to see what that looked like carry through, what that looked like, manifested in action. It's like, wow. So the look in his eyes, and I watched it one time, I didn't need to watch it twice, but I mean, that look, it really drove home, like, man, really how
I watched it 3 times probably.
Yeah.
Well, and it goes back to this. A lot of people don't understand the elections, the importance of it. And I think it's more so because they just don't understand, other than like, who am I voting for? I don't think schools have done a good job helping our children understand what a county commissioner is, what a district attorney is, what you're actually voting for, other than president and vice president. And I say that to say this, because when all of those riots was happening, they were saying, we want justice. We want justice. And I'll never forget, I made a post. I said, justice starts by voting. I mean, simple as that. You can vote for a district attorney that's going to really put those police that did what they did behind bars. It's just that simple. I mean, what's your thoughts?
I agree. I think it's true. I don't think it's taught to the to the expectation that it needs to be, and that's probably purposeful as well, for us to even just in that, like, not giving us the sense of what to vote for. But I do think that justice does come slow. We've seen changes in Ferguson over the years. It took a long time, but there's been changes in the Justice Department there, and in some of the offices that have been run for election over the years. But I do think that we need to have more done in school to teach us what the political process is really about.
And I think the sad reality is a lot of I'll say this, the millennial generation don't know what, city council, the district they live in, what district they live in, school board, who's on the school board.
And I think part of it, is somebody. I was watching the comments, and I think one of the commenters said that whoever controls the media controls the narrative, controls the and I think that's true. I think that's part of the reason, and you can't blame national media for not focusing on national or not focusing on local elections, local issues, the way they do in these 24-hour news cycles that exist today. But I think that it's up to people like us. Yeah, I think it's up to people like us. And I think the model that we still operate in was based on a model that was really crafted in the 1800s, when your congressman, like, effectively your city council person, your county commissioner, your state senator, and all that rolled into one, right? Like, I mean, maybe not state senator, but they were the people who had the person for an entire area. Then as populations grew and things progressed, we just stay focused. Same reason we care about what the Queen of England is doing and what Prince Charles and Prince Harry are doing. It's sort of just that learned behavior that's passed down. We really don't know why. I mean, it's not our queen anymore. Why do we even care what the parliament does, right? And so I think that there's an element of that exists. But I do think that it's up to locally to change the narrative and the opinions and the level of importance on local elections.
Agreed.
So, Tanisha Lewis said, I would have voted Republican the year Trump went against Hillary, but I couldn't vote for Trump. Glad to have you on board, Tanisha.
And I think those sentiments are. I think if people were honest, like brother, I think that a lot of people felt like that, and then a lot of people check that box. A lot of people check that box.
Yeah. A lot of, I think, and you know what? I'll say this. I think a lot of people voted for Trump because it goes back to they didn't want to see a woman in office.
You think so?
I think so.
You just, I don't know, really man.
I think so.
Oh man.
Thank you, Russell.
I mean, I appreciate what Kevin said. Being that close to the campaign, he was right. There was a certain arrogance about that, but I do think that whatever percentage of the people who did vote and chose not to vote for her is because of the fact that in their mind they still cannot grasp, and that was only 4 years ago, whether it was a woman or that woman. Not quite sure.
I think it was the woman. I'm sorry, man.
But I do think that, looking at the what we call minorities these days, as I said before, culturally, there are still many cultures that still in their mind, when rubber meets the road, they're not going to do it.
But let me say this, to be fair, there was a lot of people, of course, that was Democratic that did not vote for Barack Obama because they did not see or did not want to have a black man in office. This was our own people of color.
Oh yeah, well, I'm gonna tell you, you know what I mean? That's easier for me to believe in, maybe because of personal experience. But I mean, like, having run for mayor locally last year, I mean, I can tell you for certain that there are like people I knocked doors with, back in midterms of 18 and elections prior, who really, I mean, effectively told me they weren't going to vote for me. And I asked why. I mean, is the and so yeah, so the guy who won. I believe in taking to the people, letting the people ultimately decide. The margin was wide enough to where I can't hinge it on me being black, why I lost the race, which is the only pushback, why I push back a little, brother Russell, because I'm like, okay, like, I doubt that people in Michigan or Pennsylvania, like, that's what got Donald Trump over the hump, so, but I agree. I do super conservative in their political beliefs that just could not see a woman in office. Yeah, no, I agree with that. But I'm gonna have to disagree with you. I don't think it went. I don't think that was a game changer.
Oh no, well, not at all. Not at all.
Well, let me ask you this: what was the game changer as to why Trump won Wisconsin and Michigan?
I think that we did come out and vote in the numbers that we did 4 years prior and 8 years prior for quote unquote Barack Obama. I think that's number one. And I also think that whoever his Trump strategist was concerning the Electoral College, no one was watching that. We were watching the popular vote. And a lot of us forgot about the whole Electoral College and how you can pick certain areas and certain districts and get enough of that to win the game. Much like a boxing guy who will score the points to win points, while somebody else is looking for the knockout, so that's the way I look at it.
But now Hillary's been involved in national politics since the 70s. So I'm like, in what you said, not what you said, but I mean the Electoral College piece, Brother Russell. I've heard a lot of people, especially millennials, even older people, say, oh, well, the Electoral College, that's the reason Trump won. To put it colloquially, bruh, listen. There is no reason anybody named Hillary Rodham Clinton should have been bested or beat in playing that political game of the Electoral Colleges and getting on the road to 270. There's no reason for that. She's been in the game too long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
agreed.
Tanisha Lewis, and I'm gonna go back to this. I do want to hit back on this right quick. Tanisha Lewis said in the comments that we won't get to where we need to be till a black woman runs the country. Let me go ahead and publicly say, I personally think that Joe Biden should pick Kamala Harris.
And we've talked about this, Jay. That's your pick. If I had my suggestion, and I'm gonna catch a lot of flack for this, but as I said to you, I thought he may have or could have picked someone like Condoleezza Rice.
Condoleezza Rice. Oh yeah, okay.
Because she's just as qualified as someone like a Susan Rice. But from a point of
say this real quick,
trying to unify the country, trying to pick someone that maybe is not a Democrat, I thought that may have helped. That was my personal opinion.
Now I did see an article that Susan Rice sold $305,000 worth of Netflix shares. Just to throw that out there. So, I don't, it's what you think, Kenneth.
Well, I mean, if she's divesting her stock, hopefully she didn't sell it. She just moved it to like some sort of blind trust.
Oh no, she sold it. They had the article. The article was she sold it. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean,
that could be an indicator.
Yeah, I think it could be. I have not worked myself up into those ranks of knowing what that means yet. So I'm not playing with those types of things. Because I ain't selling Netflix. If I own that much, I'm not selling it. Not yet.
I mean, I do want to touch bases on this. A new thing that came out during the pandemic was the emerge of Robinhood. Are you guys know about Robinhood investments?
Vaguely, but would it be good for people who don't know for you to give a summary of what it is? People watching.
So basically, Robinhood is almost like the elementary style of investing, where you can go onto the app, you can see Moderna, which is one of the top people that's going to come out with the vaccine. Any Apple, Netflix, Twitter, you can just easily buy a stock. And I think they even have they now have fractionalized stocks now, where you can just buy a fraction of a stock now.
Right.
Well, during the pandemic, a lot of millennials, a lot of during this time has really invested during this pandemic. And so my question I want to pose to you guys, what would you say to that young person that's looking right now about investing during this time, during this pandemic season?
I have a 18-year-old who's investing in Robinhood, investing through Robinhood. We've had some conversations about it. I think it's good to have young people at a young age involved in investments, involved in futures, involved in gold. Because I always look at gold and silver as the thing no one else is looking at when everybody's invested in the stock market. I think it's great. I myself, I don't do it through Robinhood. I do it through my Cash App. Same thing. You can dollarize it.
Cash App.
Yes, sir. You can do the Cash App, do it, dollar for whatever amount of shares that you want, and you do it that way, and see what happens. Because if we're going to spend money as we frivolously do on breakfast, lunch, or dinner, you could use that same $2 to invest it in someplace else or yourself.
Coach Jenkins, Kevin. Oh, he jumped off. Kevin, you got anything on that?
No, I think it's good what Brother Russell said. I think it's good to have young people. So first of all, I hate to break it to you, JR, but millennials are like 30 to 40 now. So like 18-year-olds, like, hey, that's not us no more, bro. So you old. So these are like Generation Z, you know what I'm saying? These are the 18-year-olds that Brother Russell was talking about. That's not you, bro. So I think to Russell's point, like it's a younger generation, even younger than us, who are investing. And I think that to those younger people doing it, I think that it's important that they do it. If it's penny stocks or dollar stocks, because I promise you, you won't find many wealthy people who didn't go broke once. And then you have those who inherited wealth, right? And so they maybe never been broke, but I guarantee you the creator and the curator of that wealth went broke, once and lost it all, came close to losing huge portions of their wealth. And so I say that to say it's good that for anybody who is studying and learning how it works, how money works, beyond just earning it for your time and then spending it, because that is where lessons learned at the age of 20, by the time they're 30, 35 with a career and a family and more financially stable, they'll be leaps and bounds beyond those who are just picking it up at that point.
Gotcha. So at what point, and I really, and I'll just be frank, the white community teaches and trains their children on the power of wealth. They teach them on how you need to go out and buy real estate. You know what I mean? At what point do we get together and say to our Gen X that, it's good to invest. It's good to save your money, partner, get some real estate. And why don't we teach that? What is the problem? What are we lacking?
So you're trying to go into another hour-long conversation, but I see I'm gonna let him kick it off. Coach Jenkins, I saw you.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to make out. So I heard the question, JR. I think one of the problems is we just because of just the plight of most African Americans, and I probably shouldn't have said most, but a lot of times for us, when we finally get in a position to do nice things for ourselves or for our families, it's been years of not being able to have that social mobility. And I think that when you have been deprived of an experience from
Did we lose him?
that you have to make up for lost time. And so this whole notion of investing and saving and need to get what you've always wanted. It's almost like, you're trying to live that dream um all at once, and you can't do that. And so, to be honest, when you look at the buying power of African Americans in this country, let's just keep it real. We're very materialistic. We spend a lot of money in this country. But the thing is, the way that we spend our money is not necessarily doesn't necessarily get us to things that we deserve. And so, I mean, we can live just as luxurious as anybody else, but we don't own much. Um, and so, when you look at that generational wealth, we miss out on those opportunities because most people find themselves renting their entire lives, and so we spend a lot of money helping other entities um, get richer as we kind of get poorer. It's just like the great divide. Um, and so I just feel like that we're not taught to invest in ourselves. We're taught to spend, and I think that completely contradicts with this whole idea of investing for later versus investing in my now to enjoy now versus later.
I think Tierra Peterson just posted that heard the numbers in 2019. I'm thinking this is what he's saying, that the Black community spent $1.4 trillion and only 3% back into our community from our 1 trillion in buying power. Oh man.
So
okay.
So I do believe, I'm a preface what I'm about to say by saying I do believe there are huge equity issues when it comes to wealth in America. Like, just that one, they're huge. But I do think that you say today that blacks do this and whites do that. I think that that's self-limiting in many ways because white people are 70+% of the population. Black people, I think, barely if crack 15. And so I think that there are a ton of more white people who are wealthy, like than the portion of black people who are wealthy. And then there's like I lived in Nebraska for a few years, and like so before I moved, yeah, I mean 98% white. And my wife was a social worker out there, which really helped paint the picture of people in general. And so I used to think growing up in South Rocky Mount that white people had money, black people didn't. And so, but then when I got to Nebraska, I'm like, oh shoot, I would hear the stories my wife would tell me, and I'm like, hey, they black? And she's like, no, they white. And it blew my mind because my perspective was taught to believe something that I think didn't exist. I think wherever you have a concentration of people, you're gonna have the haves and the have-nots. Now, I do think that the further eastward you work in America, that concentration of have-nots is way darker. And those that have, get hues and hues lighter. But I do think that we got to get out of that self-limiting belief, and then realize that I think you said it, JR. You said that or maybe it was Brother Russell, but somebody said that we try to make up for lost time, and we got to realize that to use a political example, George W. Bush, he didn't become president when he ran in 2000 and he stole the race. He became president when great granddaddy Samuel Prescott Bush became cool with the Rockefellers after working his way up in that railroad company. That's when he became and so like, and I think more people, especially more people of color, we have to think like that. We can't try to make up for lost time. We have to realize that we are here to plant a tree that we'll never enjoy shade from. We have to realize that the Homestead Act was real. We have to realize that, we're going to have to buy some land that was given to others 150, 200 years ago. But so what? We took pig intestines and made food out of it. We come from people who did that. So if we got to buy some land, save up and buy some land that was given to other people, so what? Like, at least we're not eating pig guts and calling it dinner. So we stand on the shoulders of we got to wear that as a badge and go get it.
I'm just laughing at Tanisha Lewis' response about Coach Jenkins' internet.
I think she said what?
Tanisha says she's sick of your internet,
Kevin, I
Coach.
think what you said is important too, because I mean, I think it requires. Yeah, me too. I am too. I don't understand what's going on with it. I mean, I never have problems with it, so I don't know.
He over Teddy
Kevin, I
Riley's
think
house.
there has to be an ideological switch as well, because it,
Oh, did we lose him?
Jar, can you hear me?
I can't now.
Yeah, we can hear you.
So I was just gonna say, you know, it's a mentality thing too. I mean, you know, just when you start talking about building wealth and wanting to leave generational inheritance to you know your loved ones, I mean that requires a mindset to realize that you're not just living this life to have things, you know, to just have things for yourself, but you want to leave a legacy. And it's about living for now and not really for later. And so I think we even have to even shift in how we teach our kids as well.
Yeah. Coach, you're in the school system. Let me ask you a question. Why is it that schools don't teach on investments? Or did I play too much in school and miss that class?
Why did they don't teach on what?
Investments.
So believe it or not, there recently when the school changed the curriculum, probably I'm going to say about 7 years ago, there is a section that when students take civics and economics, there is a piece in there on economics. There's a piece in there on financial literacy, and there's a piece in there on macroeconomics. And so actually just recently the North Carolina DPI, Department of Public Instruction, just actually changed the curriculum that every student would take a semester-long course on personal finance. And so there has been a shift in the curriculum. We have not fully implemented that yet because it's supposed to be implemented this year, but because of COVID, I'm not sure if that's going to be not. But recently, within the last 8 months in the General Assembly, it was changed that there would be they would break up civics and economics into to a two-piece course. One would be focusing on the government piece of civics, and the other would be
Did we lose him?
Yeah, I think we lost.
Yeah, we lost him. Yeah, I agree, but I just saw where Tanisha just had posted. What he said, and I'm also, and I caught the word as well. He said a piece of it, and I agree with what Tanisha said. We need a whole pie. You know what I'm saying? Because this goes like do you know how dangerous the Black community would be if we learned this in school about stock market and stocks and how to invest? Like it's almost as if it's held back to keep the Black community.
But okay, so we gotta look at, okay, I don't think we will ever reach a place. So most public education dollars are controlled by state legislatures, and so at least huge parts of it, right? I mean, they're county breakdowns or whatever the setup of the state government is, but the biggest piece of it, you know, is federal and state. So you are right. If Black people learned it in the classroom, the public, assuming you meant the public classroom, then yeah, we'll be right. Like, okay, I don't think we'll ever reach a place to where you will have federal lawmakers and state legislatures who, in most cases, are middle-aged white men who just, and I'm not going to say they're racist. I'm going to say they don't have one Black person they truly love as a person, like whether it be a child or a cousin or something like that. And so, there's a huge disconnect, and they more than likely don't come or have any experience in predominantly Black communities or Black households. So when they are thinking about what the public schools need, they'll never think, oh man, little LaShawn needs to be, better educated on finances, because you're right. I mean, more than likely those lawmakers, they teach their kids about properties and about investments, and they're going to pass their children things. So I think that I'm gonna bounce back to you and say, I think it's up to us. We can't wait for, laws and rules crafted by people who never ever experienced what we go through as a people in this country to really reflect our best interest. And I don't think it's nefarious or ill intent. I really just think it's a matter of personal perspective.
You made a comment. Oh, go ahead, Coach.
I just want to quickly say I saw something that Marquetta Dickens just put in the quote, and I think it's important that we kind of note that, as it relates to our schools. And I had this conversation with Tanisha Lewis, and there's an argument about like were our schools better off pre-segregation or integrated. And so I think what we forget is that even though we desegregated schools, that doesn't mean that we fully integrated. So even though we said, you know what, we're going to desegregate schools and we're going to dismantle this system of racial separation, but that still doesn't mean that we fully integrated the correct curriculums into the Black schools and the Black community that already pre-existed in the other schools. And so it's funny because as I look at it through a historical lens, we saw segregation, then we saw desegregation, which meant we never fully integrated. And now we're living in a time where we're seeing resegregation. Whereas you look at the rise of, you look at gerrymandering, you're looking at gentrification projects, and we're going right back to that model that set up these systems in the first place, where there was a marginalization of what was being taught in what schools. And so, the decision makers, the lawmakers who are making decisions for our kids in public schools, their kids went to boarding school. So they don't really sometimes they don't have a true vested interest in the level of educational rigor and exposure that's being offered to our kids. When you look at the pattern of charter schools in our country, North Carolina is a unique state because in most places in America, charter schools are predominantly dominated by Black and brown students. But in North Carolina, there's this system of white flight that exists around charter schools, where charter schools are made up of mostly white kids. And so I think what needs to happen is there need to be some crucial conversations about when we say integration, that we fully integrate curriculums that will be functional and that will be beneficial for all kids and not just a group of kids.
I talked to a teacher and he said something that was so profound to me. I think there's something in school that's called the bridging the achievement gap. But he said what we need to do is just bridge the learning gap, which will allow no child to be left behind, because not every student comes from the same background. So it still allows Black kids, whatever environment they come, still to be able to learn what needs to be, what needs to be learned. I'm gonna wrap this up, but I'm gonna ask one last question. If you was approached in Walmart and you done paid for your items, and a white person came up to you and said, "Show me your receipt, you didn't pay for it," and tried to call the police on you in this new form of racial profiling, what would be your response?
Do they work there, or is it just a shopper the same way as me?
JR, could you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
So the question is, if you was in Walmart and you had already paid for your items and you was getting ready to walk out the door, and somebody approached you and said you did not pay for this stuff and tried to detain you and call the police on you, what would you do? And the reason I'm asking is because I've done seen 3 or 4 videos where this has happened to Black people, a Black family. Actually, it was a whole Black family they got detained by a Walmart employee being accused that they did not pay for their items, and they were trying to show the receipts. They had the police called on them, and everything just escalated from there. What are your thoughts?
If they don't have that yellow reflecting vest on, I'm walking to my car.
Gerald, I think, and I'm gonna get.
Go ahead, LaShawn.
I think JR, and you know me, I guess it's the teacher in me. I think it will be real easy just to kind of say, look, you got the wrong person. I'm gonna keep it walking. I live I just live to teach folks stuff. I'm gonna flash my receipt and let you know I didn't steal the stuff, but you're also gonna get a pretty I'm gonna give it stern enough to where I can't be accused of anything violent and beaten down and taken to jail. But I'm going to teach you a little bit about racial profiling, probably at a level as to where you probably wouldn't want to profile me again. I think we're too generous when it comes to letting people off the hook, and too long we've allowed ignorance to be excused by the lack of exposure or the lack of cultural relevance. And so I'm at the point now where I don't care where we are or who it is. If something ignorant comes out of your mouth, so if it's in Walmart, then it's in the middle of Walmart.
Or I got one better for you. If that don't make sense, I got one better for you. I don't remember if you all saw the video where it was a FedEx guy dropping off a package in a gated neighborhood.
Yes.
And two white men was detaining him, trying to get information from him, and he refused. And they was like, "You don't belong in this neighborhood." I mean, they just gave him the business. That's. Let me redo that question. What would you do in that type of situation? Even in the comment section, y'all let me know what you think.
So with the Walmart thing, so the Walmart thing, you know, I like to, you know, I used to work in food service, you know, and so like I try to respect people's job, you know, because I get the levels of like, hey, LaShawn, you better check or make sure they have the receipt. So I try to be empathizing in that way. So if somebody like Brother Russell said with a vest on,
me,
you know, I'll oblige and I'll, you know, show them the receipt. But I also, you know, look at it if you want, you know. But LaShawn makes a great point. You
JR,
know,
that kind of happened to me one time, and I was campaigning for a political position, and I knocked on a person's door, and just wanted to introduce myself and say hello. How you doing? My name's LaShawn Jenkins. Before I could get it out my mouth, the guy told me I was the wrong color and I was at the wrong house. And you know, I'll be honest, you know, I thought about, you know, what would happen if I acted out of my
We lose him.
I think we lost him.
Okay. Finish. Okay. Go ahead, Russell.
Now I was gonna say that you know, we can sit here and say what we're gonna do, but I think in that moment, reality sits in, and we have to figure out the temperature in the room, what's going on. I may act totally different if my children and wife are around. If I'm by myself, shouldn't be
the best option for us.
But you know, with the situation with the gated community, man, that was just crazy, and I think he handled it as well as he could have handled it. But like people are saying in the comments, I agree, because we live in this world where we can now have power in our recording. You can't let stuff like that slide. So after get home safe, and then contact your lawyer and do what needs to be done.
Yeah, because I'm a long game person, and so, you know, like, I mean, to Russell's point, you know, even you know, if two men, you know, approach me in that FedEx position, man, like I think that long game will kick in, because even if my wife, now I mean, of course, when male egos start to clash, that's different, right? So you can't say exactly how you will react, but it's like, you know, I got to make it home to my wife and kids, you know, and at the end of the day, I promise you, if you are stopping me in the middle of the street saying I don't belong in this neighborhood, I promise you, your kids are going to be asking mine for jobs one day. And so like that's where I'm gonna win, you know. And so like I play that long game, man.
I pray that if it happens to me, my prayer is that my wife is with me. Because I think I would show out. I think George Floyd and everybody in the back of my mind would just come out at that moment. But I pray it don't. So, well, guys, I'm not gonna hold you. My wife said, "Please don't let it happen to you." But look, I want to thank y'all for joining in. I just wanted to just talk and see, what you guys' thoughts was with politics. Who Biden may choose. I don't know what's taking him so long, but I'm good as long as it's Kamala Harris or Susan Rice. I actually am. And also, what's your thoughts was with politics and everything like that. So, Kevin, Russell, Coach Jenkins, I appreciate you guys. And listen, this Thursday night, to all those that's viewing right now, this Thursday night, I go one-on-one with the sheriff, and me and Sheriff Clee Atkinson of Edgecombe County. We're going to discuss some of the same things we talked about tonight, but actually we're going to dive a little deeper. We're going to talk about Black Lives Matter. We're going to talk about the defunding of the police, his thoughts on that. It's going to be a lot of interesting topics that me and Sheriff Clee will talk about on this Thursday night. So this Thursday night, tune into this same page at 7 p.m. Facebook Live. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for everybody that tuned in tonight. Like, share, and subscribe if you're looking at this on YouTube, because it is multi-streaming tonight. And good night, fellas. I appreciate y'all.
Thank you for having me, brother. God bless you.
Thank you. Appreciate you, man.
Yes, sir.